Does anyone have any questions about chapter 10 or the quiz? Today we're starting chapter 11.
No.
Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen. And so this is about helping behavior. Um, so first we'll define what pro-social behavior is. That is any act performed with the goal of benefiting another person. It's pro-social. So the motivation or the desire is what we call altruism. So the desire to help another person, even if it involves a cost to the helper, is called altruism. So pro-social behavior is the act, altruism is the motivation or the desire to act. So now going to evolutionary psychology. So evolutionary psychologists want to know what is it about our genetics? What is it about our inheritance? What is it about our ancestors that adopted certain behaviors that benefited ultimately our survival? So, Darwin's theory of evolution is that natural selection favors genes that promote the survival of the individual. So, often I've used the example of, what if the world flooded and people with webbed toes were better swimmers and they survived to make it to higher areas of land, thus reproducing people with webbed toes. Now everybody's got webbed toes because that one genetic difference, that one variation among us uh, benefited them. Here comes Timmons. Genes that further survival and increase the probability of producing offspring are likely to be passed on. Genes that lower the chances of survival and reduce the chances of producing offspring are less likely to be passed on. And so his idea, Darwin's idea, essentially was that the species that adapts to changes in the environment. Now, the changes in the environment could be natural, they could be something related to um, our physical surroundings, as in like the land or the structures around us. It could be something related to uh, something biological like germs or fungi, or it could be some humans' response to other animals and their movements and their advances. Uh, it's something in our environment that we as a species have to adapt to, and the ones that adapt best to those changes, temperature, global warming, whatever you want to call it, the ones who adapt to those changes best are going to survive longest and are going to make babies who have the same genes. It's that simple. Evolutionary psychology, the attempt to explain social behavior for this topic, right? Social behavior. So the attempt to explain social behavior in terms of genetic factors that evolved over time according to the principles of natural selection. Darwin realized early on that there was a problem with the evolutionary theory. How does it explain altruism? Altruism, right? That desire to help, even if it comes at a cost. Well, if it's coming at a cost, doesn't that decrease the likelihood that you will produce offspring? So if people's overriding goal is to ensure that their own survival, why would they ever help others at a cost to themselves? Genes promoting. So, hey, who's that?
My Uncle Matt.
Oh, I like your Uncle Matt.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's the best.
Yeah, he is. Anybody that does this is okay in my book.
Yeah. He's a goofball.
Yeah, good for him. Good for you. Matt's a good name too. I gotta tell you, I don't think I know any bad Matts.
Yeah.
You
He's
know,
the best uncle ever.
that's awesome. Good
I'm
for
his
you.
baby.
Nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. You can kind of tell because he feels comfortable enough with you to just kind of bust a chop or two with your professor, you know?
Yeah, he does. He
Yeah,
does stupid stuff all the
good,
time.
good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So genes promoting selfish behavior should be more likely to be passed on because if you're selfish, then you're making sure that you survive yourself. Thus, you're going to live longer to pass your genes on, which I guess in theory should promote survival, not just of the individual, your genes, but the species. That if we're taking care of ourselves, then that means we're ensuring that we survive individually to make more of us. And if we all just go out, run into burning buildings, then we're killing ourselves. We are putting ourselves at risk. Then we have something like kin selection. Oh, selecting for our relatives. That makes sense because our relatives share our genes, right? The idea that behaviors that help a genetic relative are favored by natural selection. It increases the chances that genes will be passed on by ensuring that genetic relatives have children. So natural selection should favor altruistic acts directed toward at least genetic relatives. Okay. I guess that's an exception, right? We've seen parents, right, put themselves in danger time and time again for their children. So that makes sense. It's instinctual, this inherent uh, drive that parents have. And if you recall, I told you the only instinct that we have remaining, really, the only instinct that we have remaining is the maternal instinct. We don't have other instincts. So, in one survey conducted, they asked people, would you be more likely to help a genetic relative than a non relative in a life or death situation like a burning house? And they said, yeah. And when they look at what is actually happening in real life, going through archival analysis, going through the local papers and hospital reports and police reports, they find that's what people actually do. Oh, to reciprocate, though, to reciprocate. Right? So I give you, you give me. The expectation that helping others will increase the likelihood that they will help us in the future. Some of these some of these agreements are explicit. Some of them are like, hey, I'll help you, you help me. And some are just, hey, I'll help you. But there's an underlying expectation, the norm of reciprocity, saying that it's normal among our expectations, among our social and cultural uh, beliefs, values, and expectations. Group selection. Well, we know that natural selection acts on the individual, right? People who have traits that make them more likely to survive are more likely to reproduce and pass on those traits, but it also acts on the group level. For example, maybe you do something that benefits the group. The social exchange theory, the whole idea behind weighing the costs and benefits. So, what we do stems from the desire to maximize rewards and minimize the costs. So, in relationships, we try to maximize the ratio of social rewards to social costs. We talked about this last chapter,
I have a
social
question.
the social exchange theory of interpersonal relationship. Does anybody have a question?
Yeah, what about the unconditional love?
Can you repeat that?
What about the unconditional love? For example,
Un
between mother and a child, or a father and a child,
mhm.
or this is different.
This is different. What you are referring to is that kin selection that we just talked about,
Okay.
where we are m- more likely to uh, help genetic relatives. And so I use the example that parents, they do all sorts of things and that the maternal instinct. And so unconditional love, That, what does that mean to you, Mimi? Let's go off of that for a little bit.
I don't expect anything.
Okay. Hmm.
So, for example, now my daughter prefers her dad, but I
Mm-hmm.
still do everything and I do the best I can to make her happy,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of. But I mean, in certain situations, she wants her dad.
Mm-hmm.
So, so what I feel like I totally understand. She needs him now,
Mm-hmm.
and I continue to do the things that I have to do, regardless of she wants me or wants her dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
Yes.
So
Okay.
I'm not expecting anything from her right now. Maybe later I will expect when she
Mm-hmm.
understands.
Oh,
And but
so okay. Yes. Yes. So your example actually does describe unconditional positive regard or unconditional love. And that is that your love um, isn't dependent on uh, what they do.
yes,
Yes, um, and um, conditional love is dependent on what they do. Um, so, but you're absolutely right. Listening to you talk about the relationship that your husband and daughter have, it reminds me so much of the what happened in my own family. And when my daughter was younger, um, she was daddy's girl. She's 14 now, and we are still very close.
mm,
But but she definitely has a very strong relationship with my wife now. Um, and they did before as well. But it's definitely strengthened, and their bond has definitely grown. We'll say,
okay.
yeah. So I'm glad that you realize that in time it'll, yeah. Okay. So some evidence that had uh, surfaced through archaeological digs and cave findings. They found um, um, I don't know what level of development they were. I don't know if they were Neanderthals. Does it say? Let me see. Where is it? Well, anyway, early hominid. So that means an earlier version of Homo sapiens. Um, Found that even in during the cave people era, if you will, uh, that they found evidence that the young the disabled of their species who had shown bone abnormalities, uh, they were taken care of essentially. That even way back then, they found evidence of pro-social behavior among our ancestors. So again, going back to the social exchange, the costs and rewards of helping can be rewarding in a number of ways. There's the normal reciprocity. If you do something nice, then someone's going to do something nice for you. It increases the likelihood of you receiving future help, right? So investment into your future. Someone will help us when we need it. It can also cause bystander distress. When you see someone in pain or someone that's struggling or suffering in some way, it causes you distress. So if you help, it makes you feel better. And then there's also the social rewards, right? The social approval. There's also your increased feelings of self-worth. Now, because you've done something for someone else, maybe you feel like your life matters a little bit more. But it can be costly. You could put yourself in physical danger. You could experience physical pain, emotional pain. You could be embarrassed, right? So, for example, Actually, one of you, give me an example of where helping someone else could lead to you being embarrassed.
You help someone up off the sidewalk and end up slipping and falling yourself.
Okay, that's true. That could happen. That would be embarrassing. That
That's
would
me.
also that would also cause you pain. Yep.
Yep. Physical danger.
Physical danger. Yeah, I
It will
guess.
cost
Yeah.
you time to get up. So I want to say that bonus points for me. I hail
Yeah, that
all.
covers all the bases, you think? You hit a home run on that one, you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
Trying to help someone that's being bullied, but
There.
they are really being overdramatic.
There you go. Yep.
Well, yeah, if you want to go for a basic answer.
Yeah. So yeah, a very common example or experience that most of us will witness is someone else being picked on, bullied, right? And it's causing you distress, and you think, I don't like this. But if you stick up for that person, you say, hey, yeah, the person's got three eyes, but come on, now they're picking on you. And then of course it could cost you time.
Also physical danger, also embarrassment, because now you've put yourself in harm's way.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I'm saying another thing that it could cost you, not using that example, but just in general. Like let's say you're volunteering or whatever to a food bank or something. That's causing you time when you're ladling all the soups and the stuffings and you know. Social exchange theory argues that true altruism doesn't exist. That people will only help when the benefits outweigh the costs. Former student of mine yesterday asked me, she didn't ask me about it, but she brought it up again. Free will, right? The ability to make your own decisions, the ability to have control over your lives or your life. You only have one, right? Unless you have dissociative identity disorder, but that's not the point.
Hmm.
Does free will exist? Do you do things based on what you want?
To a certain extent.
I
Mimi, all right, hold on. Corey first, because he jumped in first. All right, Corey, go ahead.
That's it, just to a certain extent. I think.
Wow, no bonus points.
Oh wow. Well, of all the ones I sucked up before, I should be fine.
I got some credits there. All right, Mimi, do you think free will exists? Mimi's gonna say yes.
yes. No, but as Corey said, to a certain, I don't choose to die. Sometimes I die unless I will commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the full freedom, but I have the freedom for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things are outweighed by social norms and what you're raised and how your genetics are. So I mean, there's a certain extent of yes. Like I don't like people help when the benefits outweigh the cost. I don't necessarily think that's true. Like in therapy, I was told that I needed to stop doing that because I needed to be more selfish because I was killing myself by helping others. I was killing myself with kindness.
So, free will.
Yep.
Let's see if we can all kind of work on this one together. Mimi earlier said she referenced raising her daughter. Is that a choice, Mimi? Do you choose to raise your daughter?
Yes,
You do?
yes. I can leave the house. I can leave the family.
You can?
I can, of course.
Why don't you then?
I love them.
Why do you think you do you think you're happier having a family?
Of course.
So
It's not easy. I'm not
good.
saying it's easy and
Okay.
and everything is 100% okay. No, it's not at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I choose to do this every morning.
Do you think that most people are happier having a family?
No,
do you think that most people will say that they're happier having a family?
It depends on them. I don't know. I can't judge.
No, this has actually been tested. This has actually been studied. So what they found was, even though people report overwhelmingly they are happier having a family, when they look at their rate of happiness, they're significantly less happy than someone who does not. And yet they report that they are.
Well, how do they test that?
Depends what is happiness for them.
Very good. So we call that an operational definition. So an operational definition is, how do we measure happiness?
Exactly.
Yes, right. And so happiness comes in forms of comfort. And you pick whatever form of comfort you'd like, whether it be physical comfort, emotional comfort, cognitive comfort, behavioral comfort. They are significantly less happy because they are less comfortable in all of those domains. Financially, independently, socially. This is a fact. This is a fact. And yet you ask 100% of respondents, you ask people, and overwhelmingly they say that they are happier. Well, why is that?
Perhaps it's because what we're used to responding that way. Like we're just kind of almost pushed into like, no, I'm happy. It's what I'm supposed to do.
Or sometimes it's guilt.
Oh.
These people genuinely think they're happy.
Some people just do it to settle. Like they just settle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a hint where you're digging? Because I think we're all digging like different plots.
You are all on the right track, but do you remember learning about cognitive dissonance?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the idea behind cognitive dissonance is that you are holding two inconsistent thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's creating psychological tension. It's creating essentially discomfort, cognitive discomfort. Something's got to give. And you can't just stop being a parent. Some do, and that's their way of out of cognitive dissonance. So they'll just change the behavior. But most don't. Most stay in. And so as a result, they have to convince themselves that they are happier this way. And they believe it. So they change their beliefs without even realizing it. It's the suffering and self-justification. So if that's the case, if the vast majority of people don't leave the family when they're less happy, there has to be something driving it. Corey's hat. Mimi would say, well, Corey chose to wear that hat today.
Mm-hmm.
Behaviorists would say, no, he didn't. See, Corey is all of whatever years of age, and Corey's had these lifelong experiences that led him to this point in his life where he believes that he's making that decision, but in fact, it was a series of experiences, a series of consequences, some good, some bad, that led Corey to think, feel, and act the way Corey does. And that there is no such thing as free will. And that we're all simply fleshy robots trying to survive.
I think we're reaching a little bit on that one, but all right, I'll go with it.
What makes us so special? Because we can contemplate the idea.
Yes.
So that makes us because we have the ability to think about it. That's what makes us have the ability to choose.
Hmm. We have the ability to say yes or no, to go right or left, to say yes or no.
Yeah. Well, what if I told you that you shouldn't wear that hat?
It would really depend on the morning.
What if I told you I didn't like that hat?
I don't know.
Would you wear it again?
Yes,
So you've decided to wear it again?
I have.
And nothing I've said makes any impact on that?
No, no, no. Depending on how I wake up and if my hair isn't shit, then I don't wear the hat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a 50-50.
So me saying to you or anyone saying to you, I don't like that hat, you shouldn't wear that hat, makes no impact on your decisions in the future. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm. I wear it because I like it.
Don't you even do it for somebody you love?
Mimi, if someone I loved was like, hey, maybe you shouldn't wear the hat today, I would probably be more apt to take the hat off. Yes.
Sure, see?
even
I
even
feel
if
like
you
no.
even if it has no, it doesn't matter if you do it or not. The fact that you've experienced a negative consequence from wearing that hat decreases the likelihood that you will. And if you have repeated negative experiences with that hat, it will continue to decrease the likelihood that you will. Meanwhile, you're thinking that you've decided that you will on your own without anyone's opinion or input. You still think, you still believe. Someone who has gone to therapy,
Multiple times.
okay, still believe that you have control,
Well, like I
ultimate
said,
control.
I wouldn't say ultimate. I said
None
there's
of us do.
a mild
None of us do.
medium.
Free will doesn't exist. Free will is an illusion.
All my life, people like in high school would bully me about the clothes I wear and like the stuff that I like. And now when somebody says that, I'm like, I don't care. It's me. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I try not to let it bother me anymore.
You try to not let it bother you anymore.
Hmm.
See the difference between it still has an impact. If you
Yeah, it
understand the
does.
words they're saying, it still has an impact. Whether it emboldens you, whether it strengthens your convictions or not, or whether you go along with what they say, whether it pushes you farther toward what you were already doing or back a little bit. It was an influence that you didn't have control over.
Hmm.
That's not free will.
I still feel like that's kind of like
You can feel what you want.
I
Feelings
will
aren't facts.
actually. I will feel what I want. I feel with that kind of response, there's really no way of like I don't know how to word it without proving you right. I'll think about it. I'll get
Yeah.
back.
Now here's the thing too, right? Each one of us comes from different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of us is going to be differentially influenced by some environmental happening, some
Mm-hmm.
experience. So you have, for example, someone who's had a history of bad experiences, social experiences. They might be more likely to be influenced by it, or they might be less likely to be influenced by it, as Chloe was pointing out. But it depends on your personality. It depends on what you start with genetically, how literally, this is how simple it is, how physiologically aroused you are in response to an environmental stimulus will determine your response. What do I mean? I mean that children who are more aroused uh, by physical movements and noise and uh, heightened sensory experiences, when their physical body responds stronger to it, they become timid, shy, withdrawn through no fault of their own, through no experiences was it caused. It was their genetics. It was this is the way my central nervous system operates. I respond strongly to bright lights, startling noises, quick things that move. Thus, they become more withdrawn, shy, timid, and fearful. Our culture also plays a role in this. I know this is big. I know this is heavy. I know that you want to say, I have a choice. You're entitled to that opinion. You're
No, it
you're
just seems
entitled to
that
that
with
feeling.
this, it just seems that with this, there's really no way that you could be like, I don't know how I want to say it. It's almost like you can't disprove it because like no matter, even if you disprove it, you can be like, well, see, you have no free will because of your whatever. See, I proved myself right. Like you really like, you can't prove this wrong because
these are facts. Because all little things serve the big thing. The big
yeah,
thing is simply,
well, you can't be wrong because I could say I'm not going to wear the hat, and you'd be like, oh, it's because of this. So yeah, I'm right. And I could say like, well, I am going to wear the hat, and you're like, well, because it's because of this, because I'm right. So technically, it just feels like you convinced it that you just can't be wrong.
so what you're saying, and remember this, Corey, okay? Remember this term, okay? It's called the principle of falsifiability.
Okay.
Principle of falsifiability states essentially that whatever the idea behind it is that if someone is going to, or something has a position or a declaration, you have to be able to test it.
Okay.
And so what you're saying is, well, no matter what someone says, you're going to say, well, that's because of this and that. And you're thinking, well, you're making it impossible to prove you wrong.
Yes.
Because there's no way to prove you wrong. It's like saying that God exists. Well, prove me wrong. Prove me that God doesn't. Well, how are we supposed to prove that it does or doesn't? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That violates, saying that God doesn't exist or saying that God does exist violates the principle of falsifiability. You can't prove or disprove it. Nobody can. And so you're essentially saying, well, that's kind of what you're doing.
Yes, kind of.
Well, what I want you to do is not necessarily believe me. I want you just to know the other side. That's all. Just like Mimi doesn't like to believe, or Mimi has strong opinions and beliefs and values and is spiritual and struggles with the idea that we could have evolved from something else. That is absolutely acceptable. I just wanted her to know it. And she accepted that. She's like, okay, I'll learn it. That's good. I'll learn it. I want to know. I should know, I guess, but I don't have to accept it. You don't have to accept there's no free will either. Just know it.
I think it's interesting. I think
It is.
both points are very interesting.
They are. And that's what we have to do, guys. That's what we're all doing very well right now, is we're maintaining open-mindedness. Very good. Well done. Anybody have anything to add? Mimi, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. Nothing really? Okay. Can always count on some of you to offer comic relief or, something. But okay. So what about helping behavior in non-human animals? Do we see as much pro-social behavior? No, it depends on the species. So this one child, 3-year-old boy, fell into the gorilla's cage. Gorilla picked it up, brought it to the door. Didn't do anything harmful. Picked it up off, knocked the kid out, right? Gorilla picked the kid up, brought it to the door where the trainers and caretakers come in and exit, and left it there to be taken away. Empathy. To put oneself in the shoes of another person and experience events and emotions like joy and sadness the way they experience them. Has anyone ever cried from watching a movie or a commercial or anything?
Yep.
Of course.
Okay.
I have to skip through the animal ones.
Oh my God, Sarah McLachlan still haunts me.
Ugh, I can't watch it. Ugh.
Okay, but we
Like
know
Marvel
it's
movies.
we know that in let's get away from the dogs and the Sarah McLachlan wings of an angel, whatever it is. So, but we know in these movies, these are actors. It's not really happening. It's not real. And yet here we are experiencing sadness. Or does anybody has it? You know when you what's the one with the dogs and the cat or something that get lost and they find their way home?
Homeward Bound.
Homeward Bound, right? And they finally find their way home, Shadow and whatever. And if you look around, as if you're watching with anybody else, they're smiling. They're smiling. They're so happy. You're happy. Everybody's smiling. You're like, what's going on here? We're not experiencing that.
The
And yet
Tit-
here we are watching someone else, something else experience it. And we're feeling their emotions.
No matter how many times I've watched the Titanic, it makes me cry every single time.
Okay. That's the point. That's empathy. Empathy is due to something called mirror neurons.
Is it bad that I laugh every time the guy hit the propeller?
No. Mirror neurons are neurons that fire when we experience something or when we watch someone else experience something. You know, when you get those cringe worthy experiences, someone falls and oh boy, like you feel yourself jolting a little bit, right? You see someone getting like, if someone like, you know, hits their shin on something, you're like, oh, and your like legs will tense a little bit. Those are mirror neurons firing. So mirror neurons are nicknamed empathy neurons. So the empathy altruism hypothesis is that we'll help others when we experience their feelings, we experience the emotions that they're experiencing, regardless of what we have to gain. Any feedback on this? Any thoughts?
Not yet.
Okay. But will empathy always do it? And under what circumstances, right? Will empathy cause us to help someone else? Well, in one study, they found that in conditions where people were experiencing high empathy for another individual, they would help someone named Carol. Says, I can't make it to class. Can you take notes or give me your notes? Right? If Carol went on with her story and said, well, this is why I got, you know, my dog sick, my gam needs baking soda, or, you know, something, whatever, all these things that are going bad in their life, people are likely to help her. But if she just came right out and said, can you just take notes for me and not give a reason why? Not give a reason why. They're less likely to help under one of two conditions. If they're not going to see Carol again, let's say it's literally the last class, they're less likely to help. But if they are likely to see Carol again, they're more likely to help. So it goes back to the normal reciprocity. It goes back to the cost and benefits. Someone doesn't take notes when they know they're going to run into Carol again under a low empathy condition. That's going to create discomfort. They're like, it's not worth it. I'll just take the notes. But if they know they're never going to see Carol again, they're like, hey, you didn't give me a reason to. I don't feel bad for you. You didn't give me a reason to feel bad for you. So no. So the three basic motives underlying pro-social behavior, evolutionary psychologists say, to pass on our genes. Social exchange theorists say to maximize our rewards and minimize our costs. The empathy altruism hypothesis is that, well, these feelings of empathy and compassion lead to selfless giving. Are some of us more pro-social than others? Is there an altruistic personality do we have personality traits, characteristics that make us more, some of us more likely to help than others?
Mhm.
So, an altruistic personality, the qualities that cause an individual to help others in a wide variety of situations, not just specific ones. So, these individual differences between us and our personalities are not the only predictors of helping. Other things like the situation, our gender, our culture, and even our mood.
Mhm.
So consider two scenarios. In one, someone performs a dramatic, heroic act like storming the cockpit of United Flight 93 to fight the terrorists. In another one, someone is involved in a long-term helping relationship, such as assisting a disabled neighbor with chores around the house. Are men or women more likely to help in each situation?
Men would be the first, women would be the second.
That's right. Males are more likely to help in the first situation, and females are
Ah,
more likely to in the second. Whereas men are more likely to perform chivalrous and heroic acts, women are more likely to be helpful in long term relationships that involve greater commitment. Break that apart. Greater commitment, long lasting commitments. Males, short bursts of commitment, but greater danger. People in all cultures are more likely to help anyone they define as a member of their in group than those they perceive in out groups. Now, we're not going to get into politics, but there's some pretty clear camps within our current political environment. Pretty distinct, pretty opinionated. A Trump supporter is more likely to help a Trump supporter. Biden supporter is more likely to help a Biden supporter.
mhm.
The two Trump supporters are members of the in group. Two Biden supporters are a member of the in group. A Trump supporter is not a part of the in group. They would be an out group member for a Biden supporter. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. The in group, the group with which an individual identifies as being a member of, out group, any group with which an individual does not identify. Someone give me another example of an in group, out group situation.
Maybe like people like, like, gay and lesbian and like when it like, if you're part of that group, you're part of that group. And then some people like who are against it are against it.
Okay. In group, out group. Yep. Yep.
It's loud. Sorry.
It's another one.
Popular kids, unpopular kids.
Good. What's another one?
Religion.
Good. That's a very good one. I would say all of the examples are good ones. But religion really does, like the political climate right now, right? That's kind of the way religion was or is in some respects. I mean, go back to the what was it called? What do you call what was that called with the Christians would go out and conquer? What was that called? The holy wars, right? You're people would kill each other just because of their religion.
This is in Europe.
This
Right.
would be in Europe. This was not in the United States.
Yeah.
You're right. Although, way to
I have
United.
a question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between in-group, out-group, and the division?
What's the difference between in-group, out-group, and what?
Division.
Division. Well, the in-group will essentially seeing members as the out-group creates the division, right?
No, because sometimes in group and in one group there is a division. Like for example, all the Americans are one group. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's one country, but
Yeah.
inside the one group there is a division.
Oh, yes.
You know
Yes.
what I mean?
I do. And so that they're just basing it on different demographic factors.
Okay.
Yeah. And it could be based on sex, race, religion, age, political affiliation, socioeconomic status, education, eye color, you name it.
Mhm.
Yep. So when will we help in-group and out-group members? In-group helping when we feel empathy. That's what's causing it because they're members of our group. Out-group helping when it furthers our own self-interests.
I was gonna say, like, what if you're a group of, say, the popular kids, and you see one of the unpopular kids struggling to get into their car or something? You know, would it necessarily depend on the leader of the group being like, yeah, or the individual himself going, no, I'll go help them. That sucks.
So we're going to talk, well, we've already talked about the things that lead to helping, right? So in this situation, when will there be helping if they're members of an out group, right? And so if you experience empathy, enough empathy, if you think you're going to get some sort of reciprocation from it, right? If it's something that is engendered in the culture. It also depends on your sex, right? Depends on what the situation is specifically. So there is no answer. There are too many factors that play a role in determining what or predicting whether someone would help someone else. So culture values and pro-social behavior. Sympatia. This is prominent in Spanish-speaking countries, refers to a range of social and emotional traits like friendliness, politeness, good-naturedness, pleasantness, and helpfulness. Religion. Is this where we were supposed to stop? I don't remember. We'll go there. Religious people are more likely to help people who share their beliefs. And they are no more helpful than non-religious people when it comes to helping strangers, like donating blood or tipping. Oh yeah, this is where we were supposed to stop. I wanted to stop before the experiment. Okay. I'm going to stop recording.